From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast, a weekly show for basketball gamers and hardcore hoopheads. Andrew with you once again. I'm joined as always by my co-host Derek, aka Deeper3. Derek, the release of NBA The Run is fast approaching, a date that has now actually been confirmed. We have some further thoughts to share, so please, tip us off.
Yeah, this will be our third episode discussing NBA The Run, and while it may seem excessive, we find it important. This is a new arcade street-style hoops game with an NBA license, which was dubbed early on as a spiritual successor to the incredibly well-received NBA Street Series. The official NBA The Run Twitter page is closing in on 10K followers. The Discord has a ton of activity, and the game is being heavily marketed. They are doing an excellent job in this area, Andrew. The game is set to release in roughly 3 weeks, on June 9th on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. The standard edition will be $29.99 US, while the deluxe edition will be $39.99. And just to let people know what's included in the deluxe edition, it's 3 exclusive Legacy rookie variants and 1,000 cred of in-game currency. In-game currency can be spent directly in the shop on alternate jerseys, dunk animations, badges, and banners. The Legacy rookie variants include Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant. But Andrew, the conversation this time around will be a little more special, as you finally got your hands on this game. Both Andrew and I participated in the second closed beta playtest that took place last Saturday. We both experienced some crashes, as there were server issues on their end, which I believe was caused by a congested server. But overall, I was able to get close to 3 hours in with the game, and you played for around 2. This is plenty of time to get a feel for it. Reminder that this game is being developed by Play-by-Play Studios, a dedicated team which is made up of some developers who worked on the original NBA Street Series. They are clearly passionate about this project. NBA The Run has a lot of NBA Street elements, including Bobito Garcia on the mic. The games are 3-on-3 full court, and the action, you could say, is a tribute to the Street Series, with similar alley-oop and defensive mechanics. They also have some of the most famous street ball courts in the world included in the game. The game is advertised on their website as an online 3v3 basketball game, meaning there will be no offline play at launch, meaning no local single-player mode and no local multiplayer. There are online options for solo versus the AI and multiplayer via invite friend, called Knockout Friends. We will discuss these later on in the show. Steam also advertises this game as online PvP. Andrew, we both have quite a bit to say when it comes to our hands-on experience with this game and what we know related to features. Now that you have finally got your hands on it, what were your first impressions and how did you feel about the gameplay overall?
Well, first of all, shout out to the Live King for supplying both of us with codes. Very much appreciated that we could take part in this playtest. And, you know what? My first impressions, fairly positive, Derek. Or certainly, I continue to be intrigued by this game. I wasn't repulsed by the game, if you will. When I first started playing it, I thought, I want to play more of this. It is rough, still. It is a bit janky, but I can see myself having fun with the game. Now, would I prefer it to have an offline mode? You know, an offline campaign? Absolutely, and we'll get into that once again, I'm sure. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, I'd have to say. Which is not to say that I was completely blown away. You know, I would still say this is not on the level of the original NBA Street games. There's still some jankiness to this game. But from the moment that I started playing the game, I wanted to keep playing it. I wasn't turned off, which is a pretty good sign. I was playing with Wemby, and that was a lot of fun, spotting shots, going up for some dunks. There are exciting moments in the game, Derek, and that's also what we need. You know, NBA Live 07, to use a very extreme example, you can try to adjust as best you can to the jankiness of that game, but there are no real positive moments, no exciting moments to that game. With NBA The Run, there is roughness, but there's also fun moments, exciting moments, moments that make you feel good when you go up for that big dunk, you get that snatch block, you make that fancy pass to a teammate, throw the lob, see your teammate throw it down. It feels good. You have those moments of satisfaction. That bodes well for the game, even if it does have some problems at this stage.
it captured some of the NBA Street excitement, some of the vibe. Going up for oops, in my opinion, feels very similar. I talked about this on the most recent podcast. The excitement is there with Bobito on the mic. There are some awesome dunks that just absolutely cripple your defender. They fall to the court. They lie there like a corpse. Like, there are definitely some exciting elements. Knocking people out of the air has been greatly improved since the first play test. Blocking shots and dunks at the rim is now far more viable, very similar to the NBA Street series. I know you were enjoying that with Wemby. I had some with Cooper Flagg and a couple with Donovan Mitchell as well. But obviously, which is nice, you were more capable of doing it with Wemby because of his height, because of his length, because of his ratings, etc. So there was a differentiator there, right? Another thing that they improved on from the first play test is the players are no longer bouncing while they're running. I think you noticed that immediately. The players are moving more like humans, like athletes, and that definitely gives the game a stronger visual appeal, and it feels better on the sticks. I still think that dribbling is incredibly limited. We'll get into that in a moment. I still think that there are other issues like Turbo running out too fast. We both noticed that.
Yes.
You basically can't sprint down the floor to block a shot because your Turbo will run out. You can maybe go for one shove or two max, and then your energy is completely depleted, and then you can't run back, etc. So there are definitely issues with Turbo running out too fast, and I think that hurts the game a bit. And I think that they adjusted that because there were quite a few complaints in the Discord about how often people were using the shove mechanic. That people feel like they were using it too much, so they toned down the Turbo because the Turbo factors in heavily to how often that you can shove. I think that shooting in the game is still a little bit too easy. You, me, and Q, QB1120 on the Discord, we formed Team NLSC, and we were hooping together for the most part for the entire session. And there were games, and I think you would agree, where we absolutely outplayed the other team. Great ball movement, great defense. We were, sharing the ball, taking smart shots. We were throwing it down on them, and et cetera. And basically, they won the game because they were just dribbling up the court and firing threes over and over again. And when you get a perfect release in that game, there's a fireball effect on the ball, so you know for a fact that it's going in when the fireball effect is on the ball. And I was seeing it constantly on their outside shots. It's almost too easy to get that perfect release. So we were outplaying our opponents, but we were getting beat sometimes pretty handily by them just constantly smoking threes on us. So I think shooting still needs to be balanced a little bit better, and so it's not so easy to just hit like 80 to 90% of your threes.
100% agree. Absolutely. And it's all related, that balance, and the way that sprint runs out too easily, and the way that sprint doesn't replenish fast enough after a bucket, especially, because that really contributes to the inability to run back on defense, to catch up to them inbounding with that long inbounds pass up the court, firing up those threes, as you said. At the moment, you can't really defend the perimeter that well. And NBA Street, the original NBA Street games, did counter that by allowing you to goaltend, which you can do in this game as well. And I had a couple of really satisfying spots at the rim on three-point attempts with Wemby. Just the shot coming down, going up, smacking it off the backboard. Yeah, that felt really good. But it doesn't happen quite often enough. So three-pointers are very overpowered. And like you said, turn the tide of a game very quickly. And some people might like that, and I can see why, but I do think it's very unbalanced. Like you say, 80%, 90% shooting from three. As much as I enjoyed draining threes with Wemby, I did feel it was a little bit too easy, to do. And of course, he can shoot, so it's not unrealistic. This is an arcade game, so realism kind of goes out the window anyway, but you do want to have proper exaggerations, reasonable exaggerations of player abilities. It did feel a bit too easy, and certainly trying to counter other three-point shooters was way too unbalanced. So that is something I need to fix. But yeah, with sprint, you really need to have it replenish as the other team is inbounding. Pretty much every good arcade game, every great arcade game, I should say, does this. The NBA Jam series, the original NBA Street games. You have to have that turbo, that sprint meter replenish when there is that change of possession after the bucket. When you're running back on defense, it needs to replenish so that you have that full meter for that defensive possession. And again, I can see what they're going for, like, oh, you need to really conserve sprint so that you do have enough to get back on defense and then play that defensive possession, but it's just not balanced well enough at this time. So I do think you need to have that traditional approach of replenishing the sprint meter after the bucket like that. I will say that I love the environments. I love the concept of playing on those famous street courts around the world. As I've said before, Derek, reminds me of NBA Live 19's The Streets World Tour, which I came to really enjoy as I really warmed up to NBA Live 19. Great atmosphere, obviously. Bobita Garcia is great. I love the art style, as I've said before. And yeah, like you said, the vibe is there. The basic NBA Street vibe is there. They don't nail everything about those games. And again, I would say that the street games are still ahead of what NBA The Run is at this time. But I do see enough of the street spirit in this game that I can potentially enjoy it.
And yeah, about the shooting, you'll notice that we started winning more games when I switched to Cooper Flag and I started shooting a bunch of threes for us. And I was just shooting threes in space and hitting threes the majority of the time. I think Q would attest to this as well. I probably hit 70 to 80% of the threes that I put up. And it actually allowed me and Q to make it to the finals. He played awesome as well, throwing it down with Giannis. But one of the big drivers of that run was me shooting more threes with Cooper Flag. And then him and I in tandem playing really smart defense and stopping stuff at the rim when we could. But I think just there's too much reliance on threes for a street ball game, in my opinion.
Yeah, it does remind me a little bit of NBA Playgrounds in that respect. The first NBA Playgrounds was very three-point oriented, almost drove you away from dunking, which you absolutely want to do in an arcade game with over-the-top dunks. So, again, I do think they need to rebalance that, absolutely. Also want to point out that I do enjoy the custom rules. I think that's a great idea. I love the scrolling before a game, after the matchmaking completes, how it's scrolling through all the venues and then scrolling through all the different rules to match it up, kind of like a slot machine. You know, we don't like gambling mechanics in our games, Derek, but that is a nice visual effect. It's a fun way of changing up the gameplay. It's a nice gimmick, a well-done gimmick, I think, compared to some other arcade games that tried to do their own thing and just flopped because they didn't focus on what worked. I do think this works. I will say that as exciting as the dunks are, there's probably not enough of them, and Q mentioned this on the Discord as well, that you don't have as many modifiers as in the NBA Street Series, so you kind of run out of combinations a bit quickly, Derek.
Yeah, and when Andrew's talking about custom games, what he's stating is when you play in the run tournaments, which is what we were doing for the play test, it puts you into different custom games. So one will be like 1s and 2s to 11, or 2s and 3s to 21, or dunks are worth 3 and 3s are worth 1, etc. It's just a good way to mix up the action. And when you're in these tournaments, it chooses a random court that you're going to play in. So sometimes it's going to be Rucker, sometimes it's going to be a different court, etc. And I do think that that's a great way to mix things up, keep things kind of randomized, and keep things interesting. As it relates to dunk options, I do think that it's a bit limited. There's 4 advanced dunks that you can use in the play test, and then you have dunking with the button. My biggest issue is there should be different dunks when you use the shoot button, right? Because right now, the way it works is if you use the shoot button to dunk it, it's always the same dunk. It's 100% of the time the same dunk. And that can get pretty dull. Like you stated, not enough dunks in the game for the playtest. Hopefully there'll be more dunks on release. It's also very important to note that dribbling in this game is pretty damn limited. It's one of the most common complaints about the footage that people are sharing, including my footage as well. And you know that I'm well versed on the controls for the playtest.
Yep.
Right? You can see me using the advanced trick moves. You can see me doing spins. You can see me doing step backs. You can see me do all of that stuff. But in reality, the only two effective moves in this game for dribbling is a spin move, which is why you see me do it so often, and the dribble step back. And the problem is that this is a basketball video game. It wouldn't matter if this was just a street game or an NBA game, etc. It's basketball. There are no crossovers in this game. There is no behind-the-back dribbling. And there's no left-hand dribbling. You noticed it while you were playing. It feels weird, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Basically what it is your left hand, when you do a trick move, will touch the ball for a split second, and then it will go right back to the right hand. If you're dribbling up the left side of the floor, the ball is always in the right hand. It doesn't matter where you are on the court, you're always dribbling with the right hand. And my guess is the reason for this is that the game was developed heavily early on with right hand dribbling mechanics. And if they allow crossovers and behind the back dribbling to take place in this game, it means the left hand has to control the ball, right? Somebody stated in the Discord that during like a Q&A, someone asked about the lack of crossovers. And one of the developers stated the reason why crossovers weren't in it is because they were worried about ball hogging. And I'm sorry. I'm not buying that, as I shouldn't. And my guess is that it has more to do with the heavy right-hand programming that took place early on with the game, because there is no justification that makes sense otherwise to have no crossovers and no behind-the-back dribbling in a street ball game, right? So that's a glaring weakness in this game. People are commenting on, are there any moves? Like, are there any moves outside of spin moves?
Yeah.
Are there any moves outside of basic step backs? Where's the street ball flair? Where's the street ball moves, etc.? It is a big problem. My thing with this is, and I think you would agree, I think they're rushing this release. I don't know if they're on a timeline. I don't know if they've made a promise that, they need to keep, and hey, this is when we're going to release it, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if they're like, it's been so long, we've been developing this, we just want to get this out there. Regardless of the reason, I think this game needs a few more months. That is my opinion, because you can't have a street ball game released in 2026 that's heavily marketed like this with a lack of crossovers and behind the back dribbling. It feels weird on the sticks, I think you would agree, to not have those dribble options in this type of game.
Yeah, and especially when you're marketing yourself as the spiritual successor to NBA Street. As we said before, people are going to make those comparisons. You can't say, oh, it's its own thing, it's not NBA Street. Because on one hand, it isn't, but you are marketing yourself as the spiritual successor. You are basing yourself on NBA Street in so many ways. The comparisons are fair and inevitable, absolutely. And just to back up a bit, I think you're absolutely right about designing the game around the right hand, and that's why we don't have the crossovers and the left-handed dribbling in general, not even an automatic crossover animation when you're bringing the ball up the court. Absolutely. And you'll also notice that I wasn't trying a lot of dribble moves, and that's not because I didn't know the controls or didn't want to pull off those moves, Derek, but I was using Wemby, as I said, and when I was shooting around, because there is a shoot-around mode, which is vital, and I'm really glad to see it. We were worried about that, Derek, when we talked about NBA The Run on a previous show. What was the onboarding going to be like? There wasn't a tutorial, at least in the playtest, in the closed beta version, but you do have the shoot-around mode, so you can get acclimated to the controls, the feel of the game, etc., which is fantastic. But I did notice when I was shooting around with Wemby that I couldn't pull off most of the advanced dribble moves. When I did, he stumbles and loses the ball. There's the sickening crack sound as you basically break your own ankles trying to pull off a move. And this did happen in the original NBA Street games. Trying to pull off too many moves with Shaq, you would lose the ball, which I think is how it should be. But I could barely pull off any of the advanced moves with Wemby because he just lost the ball, broke his own ankle. I think you need to at least have the big man, especially in an arcade game. You should at least be able to pull off all of the moves. Trying to put too many of them together, especially as the sprint meter is depleting, by all means, break your own ankles, lose the ball, stumble to the floor. But I couldn't really do anything dribbling the ball with Wemby, and you only have a few dribble moves, as you said, so it really does feel like a waste in a street ball game.
I mean, Wemby in real life can certainly do a spin move and a step back.
Yes.
Right? And those are really the only moves that are worth using right now in this game. I do want to also point out that the in-the-zone mechanic, originally I was like, hey, this is pretty cool, right, on the first playtest. Now it's just kind of puzzling to me, right? I didn't feel that it was useful outside of having us retain turbo. Basically the turbo gauge would last longer or it wouldn't go down at all. That was helpful, but I didn't really notice anything with like the lockdown defender piece or like the dunking piece, etc. I have to use the in the zone mechanic a little bit more to understand it better, because I just didn't feel like it was helping us at all. Right. And, I didn't see it helping our opponents either whenever they had it. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. I did want to mention that I made a post on Twitter that gained some traction. I believe it's about at 100,000 views right now. This is also feedback I shared on the most recent NLSC podcast where we discussed my experience with the first playtest, and it's feedback that I have left on the NBA The Run Discord. I stated my biggest issues with NBA The Run at this time is no offline play, no left-hand dribbling, no crossovers, and no behind-the-back dribbling. And I stated, I think that not having offline capabilities, a single-player mode, local multiplayer options, is going to hurt the game in a big way. And I also stated there are other potential issues. No legends or classic players, no create-a-player option, etc. The game could lack staying power with people who pick it up. And with no offline options, no create-a-baller, and no classic players, it may deter countless people from picking it up. And so I want to clarify with people what I mean by no offline play. You have to be connected to the internet to play this game. There are 3 game modes that they introduced to try to combat some of the complaints about lack of offline play. They have knockout squads, which is a squad of 3 where you add friends and then find the competition. So again, add friends meaning invite friends online. They have knockout solos, which is build your team of 3 and go head to head. But once again, you will be playing with an internet connection online and against AI. That's what knockout solos is. Then there's knockout friends, which is your own private tournament, 1 to 48 players. And the way this works, going by the devs, and when I say the devs, the NBA The Run official Twitter, they stated knockout solos is a single player experience where you control a team of 3 by yourself. Knockout friends is a 1 to 48 player experience where you can play against AI or against friends online. It is not offline multiplayer. It is not local co-op. It is not local head-to-head. Everybody that participates that's a human would need to have their own console or their own PC because it is cross-platform. But you're not sitting on the couch next to somebody and you guys can play head-to-head, right? Or play co-op. It is strictly online through invite friend. So, yes, there is an online solo option where you can play against AI or a knockout friends option online where you invite friends online. If the devs listen to this and this is not accurate, please let us know. But that's the way it's advertised. I read what the official NBA The Run Twitter handle stated. And again, this game is marketed on the NBA The Run official website as an online 3v3 basketball game and online PvP as advertised on Steam. So no, this game does not have any offline play. And I think that that's going to be a killer on launch because, as I've stated before, people want to play with their friends. locally. They want to play with their family. Parents want to play with their kids. Kids want to play with their parents. What about college kids in dorms? What about having friends over, getting snacks, and playing locally? There are so many different ways that people want to play local multiplayer or local head-to-head. And what about that single-player mode experience offline? What about people that don't have an internet connection? What about people that just want to get immersed in a single-player mode? So I think they're missing all of those people, and the responses to my tweet about this prove that.
Yeah, it remains a huge concern with the game, the lack of single-player offline, because people are pointing out somewhat smugly, rather incorrectly,
and deleting comments after once they figure it out.
This is true, yes. Then not owning up to being incorrect about this, unfortunately. They're saying, oh, you can play solo. And that's different to what people are usually talking about when they're talking about single player and offline. They're talking about the offline head-to-head or the offline co-op that you mentioned, Eric. The single-player campaign or a co-op campaign, an offline mode like we saw in NBA Street. And they're saying, well, this is not NBA Street, this is a different game, this is online only. Yes, that is the problem, not having that component. And you mentioned the crashes and the server problems we had during the playtest. And look, it is playtesting, they are trying to iron out bugs, but I said to you, when those crashes were happening, when we were having all those issues connecting, and they were troubleshooting it, and they were mentioning in the official Discord that they were troubleshooting their servers, that if this happens at launch, and Wizcard Rush mentioned there was about 3,500 people, he looked up the stats, about 3,500 people taking part in the playtest, which is very cool. It shows interest in this game. But if that's the load that crashed the servers, during the playtest, once this goes live and there's more people playing it, if that happens on launch day, Derek, in launch week, that people can't get online, can't play a game, and the only modes of play are online, this game is toast. This game is dead on arrival because all it has is online play. You need online to work. Maybe that was just that play session, but this is a concern. If online doesn't work, that's the whole game.
Yeah, my opinion on this, and I'll admit if I'm wrong, is I think that this game will die pretty fast. I think that people are going to find out that it doesn't have staying power. They're going to find out that it doesn't have offline capabilities. It's not something that they're going to be able to, enjoy with friends or family locally. They're going to realize that it doesn't have a create a baller feature, so they can't, build up a character. They're going to realize that the player roster is small. And I honestly just feel like it's going to have a lot of hype at the beginning. There's going to be a lot of players at the beginning, and then it's going to die off pretty fast. Again, call me out if you want, if I'm wrong, and this is a smash hit. But I just think that it doesn't have enough. It doesn't have enough content. It relies too much on an online connection, connecting with other people, with randoms, all of that stuff. And like you stated, once this game gets out into the wild, and it's no longer, a play test, that online scene could get toxic, and honestly, nobody wants to deal with that, Andrew. Right? So we will see what happens after launch.
And of course, there is an issue, which we will get to shortly, with toxicity. So that could definitely be an issue, especially with an online-only game. Happens with other online-only games, and primarily online games as well. Even NBA 2K, which has a lot of offline content, as we know, still has that problem with its toxic online scene. And I know that firsthand from my experiences in the Rec and 2K Pro-Am. 2K Pro-Am being better, of course, because you're playing with friends, but you still have some toxicity from opponents, and in the Rec, you are matched up with people who definitely don't want to play ball. My other concern, apart from online stability, and that is a big one, obviously, is the potential for microtransactions, because there's a lot of talk in the Discord of how to make money with this game, which I don't know why we're worrying about a company's financials as opposed to the quality of the game. That's just gaming discourse in 2026, I guess, Derek. But I'm concerned that this game is going to have too many microtransactions.
Yeah, I saw the 1,000 cred related to, which is the in-game currency, which is connected to the deluxe edition, which is $10 more, by the way. It makes it a $40 game. That concern me a lot, right? That makes me think that this cred, this in-game currency,
The shop's
is
going
going
to be a thing.
to, yeah, the shop's going to be a thing, and it's going to continue to be a bigger thing if they feel like they can get away with it. Again, I think that they've done an admirable job so far. Play-by-Play Studios. The play tests are great, even though we had some crashes. I think it's a great way to get a lot of gamers on the sticks.
Definitely.
A great way to take in feedback. They've been very receptive to feedback. If I post a highlight on the Discord or I say something, oftentimes a developer or somebody that's a manager in the Discord, they'll respond to it, or they'll put like a fire emoji or something like that. They are doing all the right things, in my opinion, from a marketing perspective. Trying to give the game NBA Street vibes as far as the atmosphere, getting Bobito Garcia in the game, all the different courts that they have in it. Like they're doing a lot, right? But it doesn't mean that there aren't some red flags. Right. And we are allowed to point those out. We're allowed to critique, and we're definitely allowed to worry. And the in-game currency thing tied to the shop, the cred, all of that, it does make me worry.
Yeah, and obviously we do have some gameplay concerns, as we've outlined, but there's also fun moments. We've had fun on the sticks. So if everything runs smooth online, if they can polish up the gameplay, I think on the sticks, it can at least be an okay game. The lack of dribbling moves is going to be a big knock against it. There are other issues, other elements that are janky, but we did have fun with the game. But these are red flags. Like you said, the possibility that it's going to have these greedy microtransactions, too much content that's paywalled, not earning cred fast enough in-game to unlock things. And for some reason, these days, people are justifying microtransactions. Somehow we've lost the war on recurrent revenue mechanics, Derek. It's very depressing, especially when you look at the WWE 2K user base pushed back on the ringside pass, the battle pass that was very poorly implemented. 2K actually backed off of that. They actually changed the approach. Look what happens when you speak up. This is why it's important to be critical of problems, whether it's gameplay or issues with recurrent revenue mechanics or online connectivity, online stability. It's worth speaking up. Constructive criticism is not hating, as we've said before. So yeah, even if the game is pretty solid on the sticks, there's some other red flags that are pretty concerning right now, Derek.
Yeah, and they stated several times that there's no microtransactions at launch, right? That's great.
At launch.
But if you remember correctly, we read an article early on about this game, and they said that it wasn't out of the question that microtransactions could come in, right, at some point. So, that cred, that store, just, we'll see what happens with it. But I hope that it doesn't become a greedy game.
Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, nba-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at nba-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
But I wanted to get to some of the responses to that tweet where I stated there was, my biggest issues were no offline play, no left-hand dribbling, no crossovers, no behind-the-back dribbling, and then stated a couple other concerns below. But yeah, again, this tweet is closing in on 80,000 impressions at the moment, and these are some of the responses. One person states, yup, and I won't be buying unless they do add a offline single-player mode. Another user states, I won't think about playing the game until they add all of these things you mentioned that should be in the game. I don't have time to play with randoms. I don't have the energy to play with them. That's So Rel, friend of the show, states, I didn't know that. It's kind of a bummer for me, but I hope in future updates they will have all those features later on. Another user states, yeah, these are also my issues. I see they mentioned they made changes, but after looking at the second playtest, I didn't notice a difference. I played the first playtest and it was fun, but it's hard after playing NBA Street, which I still play to this day. Another user states, from the gameplay I have seen, I didn't see any kind of layup animation. And Andrew, I believe I've seen one layup animation. It's like a floater / finger roll right in front of the rim.
Yes.
And that's the only one that I've seen. Another user states, how do you create a street ball game with no dribbles? Another user, no left-hand dribbling. Does the creator think everybody hoops like Jaylen Brown? Another user states, facts, my same issues. People I played with never passed the ball or played defense. Fun for the first few games. After a while, got really annoying. So he must have been part of the play test. Another user states, most definitely a lot of games go downhill with no offline play. If it doesn't happen, I'm sorry, but the game will die, which is what you stated, Andrew. Another comment, totally blows. I know the game is not 60 or 70 bucks or even 50, but for that price, online only, I'm going to wait. And hopefully they will improve the product. Another user states, I believe a lot of the awkwardness is because the ball doesn't switch hands and the fact that there isn't many juke animations for between legs and killer crossovers. There should also be a layup package. Next user states, I hope there's an offline mode, not trying to be in someone's clip or content. Another comment, can't play offline. Yeah, I'll pass on the game. Makes no sense. They're forcing people to play online. Next user states, there's no local multiplayer at all. They thought they had one person controlling 3 versus one person controlling 3. Next user states, these types of games relying on multiplayer to be successful means they're just guaranteed to die within 3 months. I give this game 3 weeks, to be honest. No offline play, linear gameplay, $30. No life after the first initial nostalgia burst. Pass. No offline is crazy. I wanted it on the Switch too as well, but now after seeing this, it's kind of pointless. Love offline season modes. Any interest I had is now gone thanks to no offline and limited to no solo player value. This game is literally here to play for a few weeks, then we all dipping. No left-hand dribbling makes no sense. That just makes it look stiff. No left hand in 2026 is crazy work. If there are no offline modes, then I'm not buying, plain and simple. It looks ass, let's be honest here. They need to stop making these types of games. This isn't EA big anymore. Anyway, there are a lot of comments under this thread, and most of it speaks to the fact that people can't believe that there's no crossovers or behind-the-back dribbling in a street ball game, that the ball is in the left hand 100% of the time unless a trick move is taking place, and the fact that there is no offline play. You have to have an internet connection. There is no local multiplayer options, no local co-op, no local head-to-head, and no offline single-player mode. So those are some pretty serious concerns. And I also want to make a point, too, that I've also promoted the positives of this game. I think you would agree, Andrew. I've shown highlights. I put highlights in the NBA The Run Discord and the NLSC Discord. I've put multiple highlight videos up on YouTube, including one that's over 12 minutes in length from the last playtest. It's Team NLSC highlights, and it's you, me, and Q balling out during the playtest. So it's not like I am only critiquing the game, but these critiques are valid, and it's the pulse of the community right now as it relates to this game. I'm not the only one talking about this stuff. If you take a look at the NBA The Run Discord, you can see a lot of people bringing up this stuff in the general chat, and you can also see it in the feedback forums. But my concern, Andrew, is that we're way too close to release to implement left-hand dribbling, crossovers, and behind-the-back dribbling. And it's certainly too late to implement functional local offline options.
Yeah, there's been a few people mention that it feels rushed, that it feels like it needs more polish. And I was looking up before we started recording, and I noticed that the first NBA Street released on June 19th, 2001. And of course, this is releasing on June 9th, 2026, which is around the 25th anniversary of the original NBA Street. So you do wonder if they're kind of shooting for sort of around that anniversary. You know, maybe it's just a coincidence, but it certainly seems like this game needed some more polish, needed some more depth, not just in terms of modes, but obviously the gameplay as well. And like you said, Derek, we are bringing up positives on this show. You've mentioned it in the official Discord, on our Discord, in the forums. But you do have some pushback on anyone that's daring to criticize the game. And I touched on this in episode 629 when you shared your impressions from the first closed beta, that people are obviously excited for this game, and they're absolutely entitled to be. That's a good thing. But some people are wrapping up too much of their identity in this game, and it's succeeding. They're becoming fanboys before the game is even out, pushing back on any and all constructive criticism. There's a response to one of the replies to your tweet, Derek, pushing back on very valid criticism, says, "When was the last time you played any NBA Street game? I guarantee you didn't play longer than an hour. You probably don't even own any of them. NBA Street is amazing, but it's over. This is new and plays almost the exact same." And again, that's in response to somebody who responded to you with very valid criticism, agreeing with your valid criticism. Not only is that smug and condescending, you don't know the game, you probably never owned it. Ironic, because if he's making that comparison and saying that this is almost the exact same as NBA Street and plays better or anything like that, then frankly, I'm going to point the finger back at him and say, did you ever play NBA Street? How long has it been since you played NBA Street that you're making that comparison, that you're bringing that up? And we do see some other remarks like that. And again, I get being hyped for the game and wanting it to be successful. We're not sitting here, wanting it to fail, Derek. We're not trying to bring the game down. We're just being honest with our opinions. And look, if somebody really enjoys the game as it is, I can't deny them that opinion. I do think they're missing a lot of issues, actual issues that we are pointing out, and other people are pointing out too. I think there are a lot of people burying their head in the sand over this, again, because of their enthusiasm for the game and wanting it to succeed, as we do too. But these are valid concerns, and remarks like that are just not constructive.
Yeah, Andrew made the mistake of jumping into the NBA The Run Discord to see what was going on. And the first thing he saw was toxicity. He saw people pointing out valid critiques about the game, not even being malicious either. Just stating, hey, I think it would be nice if the game had this, et cetera. This is where it could be improved. And just a couple people in there just being super nasty to them, shutting them down, calling them broke, all of that stuff. And it's nauseating, right? And the problem is that those people are the loudest. And it could be, and this happens in the NBA The Run Discord, where you can have, a bunch of people making the same critiques. And in fact, the majority of the people making the same critiques, but there's just a loud few who have a one-track mindset, and they're going to support the game no matter what. They're going to shoot down all criticisms. Some of these people are content creators. Some of these people are trying to grow their channels. Some people have been there since the beginning, and it's the only way they can think. I encourage more people to look at context. I encourage more people to think about the big picture, think about other gamers' experiences, think about the different ways that these games can and should be played, what the game's missing, etc. So, unfortunately, it's usually a loud few, and they are obnoxious.
And you mentioned the broke comment, which was in the midst of a discussion where somebody threw out the idea that this game should be $70 because the game needs to be profitable. Again, we do want the game to succeed. Why are we worrying about a company's financial situation? We should be worrying about the quality of the game. But they're saying it should be priced at $70 because that will give everyone the impression that it's a premium product. And people are pointing out that, it's
not worth $70.
It's not worth $70.
They would be cheating the consumer at that price. It would be unbelievably unfair. And I can guarantee the game, especially if bought on Steam, where there's a 2-hour window, that people would return it at an incredible rate.
And that's the thing. Sure, it gives that impression pre-launch, but then when people get their hands on the game and it doesn't feel like it's worth $70, like you say, they're going to refund it. They're going to leave negative reviews, say this isn't worth the price tag. We brought up NBA Bounce before. Not a bad game, but not worth what it's selling for. This is an indie game. It's a digital-only release that does have smaller overheads. Obviously the game absolutely needs to make a profit. Again, we want it to be successful, but you can't price it like a AAA game. It doesn't have the depth. It doesn't have the quality. You price it that high, people are either not going to buy the game because they're going to say, well, I've seen what it has. and that's not worth $70, or they're going to buy the game and again refund it. And of course then turns to, oh, you're broke, you can't afford the game. Look, bragging that you can afford to overpay for something that isn't worth the price tag, that's not a flex. That's proving the old adage true, Derek, that a fool and their money are soon parted. And that guy certainly sounded foolish.
Yeah, the game doesn't have the depth to be priced that way. It doesn't have the quality to be priced at $60 or $70. I stated on the Discord, and I'll say it again, after the second playtest, I think the sweet spot for this game, knowing what it has for features and knowing the gameplay, I think it's $20, right? I think that would have been the sweet spot. I think $30 is a bit high. I also think $40 for the deluxe edition, just to get 3 extra players and 1,000 cred. And 3 extra versions of the same player that's already in the game, by the way. I think that's ludicrous. And again, that also worries me a bit, to be honest.
Yeah, and I honestly don't love the price, because that's $29.99 US. At the current exchange rate, that's about 42 Australian dollars. Does that break the bank? No. Can I afford it? Sure. Is it worth it? I'm not sure. Without that offline content, that is a bit steep, honestly. $30.35 is the price that I said in Australian dollars on a previous show that I'd be more willing to pay. Will I get this game? Yes, because I want to cover it, want to play it with you. I do think it has potential, but that price tag may be slightly high. Yes, they do need to cover costs, obviously. They need to give the NBA their cut. So I understand, but it definitely is risky at that price. The other comments from the Discord that I saw that made me chuckle, kind of mirthlessly, Derek, was people pushing back on any gameplay criticism by saying, skill issue. Now, Play-by-Play Studios explicitly said that this game is being designed to be pick up and play, which I think it is. I think it does do a great job of that. If you are familiar with the NBA Street series, you will acclimate to it very quickly, I think. Even if you're not, I think it'll be fairly easy to pick up as well. So, when people say it's a skill issue in a game that is not overly complex, I don't think it's a skill issue, Derek. I think it's issues with the mechanics, issues with the balance. Again, get good is one of my least favorite sayings in gaming discourse, Derek, but here, it just sounds totally ridiculous.
Yeah, especially because, like you stated, the game isn't that deep, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's only 2 or maybe 3 viable dribble moves that you can even do. And if you just wanted to dunk with that one dunk with the dunk button, you could just get away with that, right? So, I completely disagree as well, and I hate that. Let's get to the community's responses to this week's community question. I asked, NBA The Run releases on June 9th for PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and Steam PC. It's priced at $29.99 standard edition, $39.99 deluxe edition. Again, these are US prices. The game is online PvP, no offline play or modes on release. And again, I explained what that meant earlier, despite having knockout solo, knockout friends, knockout squad, etc. I asked, with what you know about the game and the footage you have seen, do you think that these are fair prices? But I do want to point out that I think having no offline modes, like no offline single-player mode and no local multiplayer options co-op or head-to-head, I think they're missing out on thousands and potentially, depending on how good the gameplay gets, millions of consumers. Responses are Steven from Live King states, I think it's a pretty fair price, but these randoms will ruin the experience. The game really needs an offline mode. I played the mode where it was you versus another. It's possible to implement. If the game improves over time, it might be a bargain deal, in my opinion. And I know that he was struggling with the randoms because he made another post on X about how miserable that experience was. I did try to connect with him. It looks like he wasn't able to connect to my invite because of all the crashing issues during the playtest. But yeah, the randoms piece and being automatically connected to an AI when somebody drops out, that wasn't great, Andrew.
Yeah, and that's always the risk with online play. You're really relying on the kindness of strangers. When you're playing with randoms, Derek, you're relying on them to be good teammates, to be good opponents, sporting opponents. This has been the big problem with 2K Online. the toxicity in that scene, both from teaming up with people and also the lack of sportsmanship, from your opponents. So yeah, beyond the mechanics, anything else with the design of the game itself, you're relying on other people to have a good time. And unfortunately, you can't always rely on other people like that.
Washed Gamer at Real Washed Gamer states, fair price for some, not for me. Game's a hard pass unless they had a story/campaign mode like NBA Street.
There you go.
Mirror Master. Yeah, exactly. Mirror Master at OG Semadams states, it's a pass for me. It's just a reskinned NBA Jam. Looks boring as F, and no offline is a disaster. I'm seeing this game get compared to NBA Jam more than NBA Street, actually, at times, for the fact that it lacks street ball moves, right? But just a reminder that NBA Jam on Fire Edition, which we played earlier, and NBA Jam 2010 has crossovers, right? NBA The Run does not at this time. And the crossovers are really good in NBA Jam OFE and NBA Jam 2010.
And I do see that comparison because of the lack of dribbling moves, but NBA Jam, far more exciting dunks, far more exciting action, far more polish, the best NBA Jam games. You talk about the price. NBA Jam on Fire Edition released for $15, and people say, oh, inflation, but video games have notoriously been inflation-proof, Derek. And even if you did adjust for inflation, NBA Jam on Fire Edition, online play, offline play, a huge campaign mode. We've got to get back to that, incidentally, Derek. But so much in NBA Jam on Fire Edition for a cheaper price. This is why people are pointing out that the price, it's not about can you afford it or not. It's, is it worth it? And when you have games, digital games like NBA Jam on Fire Edition that were released cheaper, yes, sure, 14, 15 years ago, but at the same time, with a lot more content, that comparison is fair.
Yeah, also, what happens if the servers go offline at some point?
Game's dead.
And this game is online only. The game is dead. Silky Warrior at Blackjack 716 states, I think so. It's an arcade game that is going to have no microtransactions, and they plan on adding more to the game. I would even pay the $40 for the deluxe. From what I played from the first 2 beta tests, they're on the right track. So some positive vibes there. States there's no microtransactions, and that is true at release. Homeless Ninja at Homeless Ninja states, seems okay-ish. The price doesn't offend me, but while I want to get it, I'm not 100% convinced. Lack of offline modes like Create a Player and no legends and a limited player lineup makes me hesitant. And again, the game is being released with 30 current NBA stars and 5 unique street ballers created by the devs. Number 4, John Reese at John Reese 247 states, heck no, not even worth $5 if it doesn't have offline modes. Bingy at Bingy21 states, no offline is a killer, hard pass. Action Jack at Action_Jack8 states, from what I played yesterday, yes, it's worth the 30. I know they plan to continue making changes and additions to the game. They're off to a great start. Robo Gaming at RoboGaming23 states, I hate when studios push games out before they are fully completed. After playing the beta yesterday, this game still needs a lot of work, and I agree that it could probably use some more months in development, Robo Gaming. Jared at JaredShay24 states, not having an offline mode is absolutely insane. Whoever decided that not having a cool NBA Street-like single-player mode where you can unlock characters should be fired. B at B3NGIII states, for $29, I'm buying this for every hooper, whether they want it or not. Fun-ass game for real, so he must have been part of the playtest. Adam Zaleski at Adam Zaleski 8 states, it's not going to last with no single player. So sad. Kenji at Kenji OSS states, solid price. Greater_Green at Greater_Green states, absolutely not. Man the Dan states, trash. And Tall Dog says, no.
And we are seeing a recurring theme, once again, Derek, that lack of offline play, that lack of a single-player campaign or a co-op campaign, that traditional mode that's not online PvP, it's a big deal to people.
It's a huge deal. And I think it's going to be a major problem at launch and throughout the game's cycle. We go to Discord. Andrew, you replied. You stated, at this point, I'm probably going to get it for the sake of coverage and collection, and I too would like to play with people I know for as long as it's fun for us. And we did have a decent time, right? During the playtest, you, me, and QB1120. So it's not all negative, but these critiques are valid. Wizcard Rush states, yep, I plan on picking it up. I think there are good enough bones there. I would love to see them add the ability to tweak sliders for the private tournament mode and hopefully for future offline play. That would make me more inclined to play the game long term. Kid Cash stated that he doesn't want to, but he will pick it up so he can play with y'all. And when he says y'all, it means Wizcard and, people in the NLSC community, you, me, QB1120, etc. And then Pep also responded. He stated, no crossovers in a game that's based on street ball, LOL. Maybe they shouldn't rush a release and push it back for a few months so they can polish everything.
Yeah, so there are some positive responses. Obviously, people looking forward to the game, which again, I don't want to rain on their parade. This is our honest opinions, but if people are enjoying what they're playing, if they are online-only gamers, if they enjoy PvP, they'll have a different perspective to us. Understandable. But there are many valid concerns, from the lack of dribble moves to the balance to obviously the possibility of microtransactions, the lack of offline play. Yeah, it's not a case of a bunch of people hating on it, Derek. I think a lot of people who do know basketball video games, who do remember NBA Street well, know how good it was, how great it was, know what made it great. This is why they have these criticisms. So when you see the comments like the one that I read out in response to you, saying, you don't know NBA Street, this is amazing, this is better than ever. If you think it's amazing, that's fine. But to say that people who are criticizing NBA The Run don't know NBA Street, you didn't even own it, no, that's just absurd. These are valid criticisms and valid concerns.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of negative comments related to what's included in the game features-wise, the animations, the lack of street ball moves, etc. And that is very important to note, and they should be taking that feedback very seriously because, as we've stated before, there are countless people that go online to praise video games. That's why on Steam there's so many games that are overwhelmingly positive and very positive. If people like the product, if the product is fair to them, if it's fun, if they like the features and modes, they will tell you. They will let you know that it's awesome. So all of these comments, all the people leaving comments showing concern, that needs to be taken incredibly serious by the development team. And it's also worth noting, Andrew, that there's only 18 or 19 people, from my understanding, that are actively working on this game. We know that it's a small development team, right? But they're putting it out there. There's a price tag on it. People are going to have to pay their hard-earned money to pick up this game. And because they're putting it out there, and because it's also been dubbed a spiritual successor to the NBA Street series, people are allowed to critique this game. They're allowed to have wants, especially for a product that they are paying for. So that's very important to note.
I mean, if you're an NBA player that comes out and says, we're going to win the championship, we're going to win 3 in a row, we're going to dominate the league for the next 5 years, and then you don't, people are going to call you out on that, Derek.
Yeah, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4.
You got it.
Not 5, but only 2, right? We're just going to, it's just 2. Do we have any responses on Facebook?
We did have a couple of people weigh in on Facebook. Jonathan says, change the skins versus shirts, so not a fan of that approach. I do like that approach, Derek. I think it works for street ball, but obviously people do remember the great stylized jerseys of NBA Street. And of course there are alternate jerseys and things that you can get. But yeah, not everybody a fan of shirts versus skins.
Yeah, well, I was proud of the fact that we beat the 3 shirtless LeBrons. So we played against a team in one of the tournaments that was 3 LeBrons wearing yellow pants and do-rags, and they're just all shirtless. And so, yeah, there were skins. And I really wanted to beat that team. It's 3 LeBrons, and we beat them 21-18, I believe. So that was a good win.
And as a sidebar there, Derek, we mentioned this before, but kind of mixed feelings about having teams full of the one player. And it is the closed beta. There's a limited amount of players that you can select. Also, sidebar to the sidebar, Derek, I didn't love the method of player selection. Having to scroll with the triggers, having to click on the player, not being able to just go left and right to go through all the players. At first, I didn't think you could select anybody else. You know, it's a nitpick, but I don't think it's a very well-designed part of the interface. The rest of the menus, I think, pretty good. That part was a little bit weird. But I think this is going to be a problem, kind of like with Play Now Online in NBA 2K, where everybody uses the overpowered champion, when there is one, the Golden State Warriors, for a few years there, Derek, where everybody kind of picks the same players. Or, much like 2K Pro-Am, the Rec, the Park, in NBA 2K, where you have the OP builds, the meta, where everybody is trying to make that same player, that same game-breaking player. So I think you're going to have a lot of games where you do have multiple players. And you kind of have to because of the limited selection, but it does get a bit repetitive. It can get confusing, especially when they're all wearing the same thing. So yeah, I see why they're doing it, and it does have its benefits, but also a bit of a concern there as well.
Yeah, the player roster is too small, and the fact that there's no create a baller option, so you can't have like your own unique look. One thing that concerns me a little bit is, if they start tying more items to the store and you want your player to look different, then that's going to cost cred.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see how fast you can build up cred and how that system works, but just something to think about.
And finally, Daniel asked, does this have a single-player mode? And Ryan responded, pointing out what we've pointed out. And then Daniel says, not sure I'm going to get this then. And it's a point that you've brought up on this show and in previous shows, Derek, that people kind of don't know that this doesn't have that single-player offline campaign mode, that it is PvP. And obviously that is out there. It's being described as an online-only PvP game, but it still seems to be flying under the radar, the exact nature of the game, the lack of offline modes. A lot of people, until you pointed it out or somebody else points it out, isn't aware that it is online only, that it doesn't have the offline campaign or story mode or season mode or whatever. So yeah, there's a chance that a lot of people are going to pick it up, not realizing that, not seeing that it is online only, being disappointed, and there could be a big backlash. That's going to hurt.
Yeah, it says right on the Steam page, online PvP, right? And it doesn't say anything about offline play. And then on their main NBA The Run website, it says online 3v3 basketball game. So it's out there. My issue is yes, it seems like there's so many people out there that are unaware, including people that are hyping up the game and saying, oh, well, this looks good, all of that. And it's going to be a shocker for those people. There is the knockout solos option, but again, you need to have the internet connection, and it seems very bare bones. It's not like a campaign. It's not really a mode, etc. And then you have knockout friends, which once again, you have to be online, and you have to use an invite friend option. You can't play local co-op. There's no couch play here. There's no local co-op, no local head-to-head. So that's going to be a shocker, I think, for a lot of people. And there were early interactions when they were promoting this game where somebody would be in the comment section, and I pointed this out on a prior show, and they would state, oh my God, I can't wait to play this game with my son. I was a big fan of the NBA Street Series. And you look at the guy's profile picture, and his son is like 10 years old. He thinks that he's going to be able to play this game offline, right? He thinks he's going to be able to, play co-op with his son at home or head-to-head. No, your son would need to have his own console and or PC, and you would need to have your own in order to play multiplayer on this game because that offline component isn't there. And my issue with that is that the NBA The Run channel responded to that person not by saying we don't have that option right now, or it's not going to be on release. So I think that they did advertise that this is not going to have offline options on the NBA The Run website and on Steam. But, it's not out there enough.
Agreed. And it doesn't help when you have content creators, as you said, and just gamers in the community spreading misinformation, replying to your tweet, for example, saying, you're wrong, there's definitely an offline mode, and citing knockout solos and so forth, and spreading that misinformation, making people think there is an offline mode, not the offline mode people are thinking of.
Yeah, and not offline at all, but you still need the internet connection.
Indeed.
Right. It's not what people think. So we will see what happens on release. We'll see if they add offline components later in the game cycle. But yeah, there's going to be some confused people, I think, when this game launches.
And look, like I've said on this show, in the Discord, I'm going to pick up the game. I want to cover it, play it with you. I can see myself giving it a go. But the big question is longevity. How long are we going to stick with it? Might be a fun thing to throw on every now and again, which is fine, maybe a bit overpriced for that, but is it really going to be that huge success if most people end up feeling that way, that it's not a game they want to come back to? Or again, if there's a disaster on launch, with the servers not working or whatever, crashes like we were experiencing, that's going to be very damaging. Hopefully not. We'd like to see this game succeed, but like you said, Derek, some red flags.
Yeah, I am going to pick it up when it's released. You and I have really big basketball gaming collections. This is going to be part of them. And I'm going to try to connect with you and maybe Q and whatnot and get some online games in. But, as a basketball gamer and somebody who covers basketball games, it's not just about my experience. Obviously, I would love offline play because I'd be able to enjoy this game with my brothers, co-op or head-to-head. And a campaign mode would be really cool for us to jump into as well. So that hurts us. But, I'm worried about our fellow gamer, Andrew, who, wants that couch play experience, who wants to enjoy the game with their kids. A kid who wants to enjoy this game with their friends or with their siblings, college kids in dorms who, want to pull all-nighters with these games and just have an absolute blast. I'm worried about those people that want to have those special local experiences that, now they're not going to pick the game up, or they're going to pick it up, realize that it doesn't have these experiences, and then they're going to return it or just regret the purchase. Like, I think about the big picture with these games. And yeah, I think the lack of variety in the gameplay right now, especially related to dribble moves, the lack of offline play, and the potential for microtransactions in the future, those are all areas of concern for me.
Absolutely. And that's why we are being honest with our feedback, honest about the game, putting the right information out there, because there is some misinformation floating around, unfortunately. But thank you to everybody who responded to Derek's community question. Great to hear your feedback on the game. And of course, keep the discussion going. Let us know if you've played the game, if you were part of the closed beta, what you thought of the game, what you think of Derek's footage, other footage you've seen. Yeah, let us know what you think of NBA The Run so far, and we'll certainly continue to comment on the game ourselves. With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. Thank you for tuning in, and a reminder you can catch us every week on the NLSC, our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast platforms. Also, both we and the NLSC are on social media, and would appreciate a follow. So, Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
Yeah, you can reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at D43G and at D4384. I'm also on the NLSC, D43, and on YouTube, D43.
As for me, I'm Andrew in the forum, and Andrew NLSC on X and Blue Sky. The NLSC is on X, Facebook, and Blue Sky at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep it locked to the NLSC itself, NBA-live.com, for all things basketball gaming. So, thank you again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.